Hi there, welcome to BizTalk. I'm Mikhail Raj. There have been calls to reboot the country's digital initiative because digital is vital to expanding the economy. Basically, what we need are real digital policies with enough bite to lift the Malaysian economy and put it back on the growth path. So the question is, come October the 11th, when the government when it tables the budget 2020, will the government come out with comprehensive budget proposals to push the digital agenda? The full details on BizTalk. Welcome back. For more on Malaysia's need to have real digital policies, we have in the studio Dr. Sivapalan Vivekaraja. He is the co-founder and chief investor of Scale Up Malaysia. Welcome to BizTalk, Dr. Siva. How are you today?
I'm very good, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you are quite an expert on the digital economy. I've read about you and things like that. But straight on, with October 11 just about 2 weeks away, tell me, what are your suggestions the government should include in budget 2020 that actually amount to what is described as real digital proposals and initiatives to expand the economy and to really create a digital economy and carry Malaysia to the next level?
Okay. First of all, I think I don't want to start on a very dark note.
Okay.
But I think 2020 is going to be a tough year. There are a lot of signs that there might be a bit of a slowdown, there might be a bit of a recession. So I think what the government needs to do really is to have an expansionary policy in terms of the budget. So they need to actually do more to pump prime the economy so that the economy will grow despite there being a slowdown. Hopefully it will be a very small slowdown or a short slowdown. But if you talk about incentives itself, Malaysia actually has been very lucky because we have had really good policies and really good incentives for the last 20 years, starting with MSC Malaysia in 1996 by then Prime Minister and current Prime Minister Tun Mahathir. And we have actually grown our digital economy significantly. We have probably close to 10,000 Malaysian companies who are all involved in the technology sector or doing digital in one way or the other. So I think we have done well in terms of those policies. In terms of implementation, I think it certainly could be better. But in terms of what going forward we need to do, I think there's a lot that we need to do. Certainly, I think the whole world is becoming more digital. I mean, we all use technology all the time. But if you look at the economy itself, it can be more digitally driven. I give you an example. We're always talking about, I mean, the new policy is about the shared economy, about shared prosperity, and about helping the B40s, for example. So if you look at the B40s, many of them are, from rural areas or even, the less wealthy urban areas. And the e-usahawan, or we call them micro entrepreneurs, actually need to earn extra incomes, and they actually can use digital to earn extra incomes. So my company Proficio, we run a program jointly with MDEC, Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation. So what we do is there are a lot of entrepreneurs, micro entrepreneurs, mostly women and youth actually, who are making and selling little products. So they make things like fashion items, they make F&B items, they make the sambals, they make cosmetic items. A lot of them just try and sell it by putting it in some shops here and there everywhere, but they don't earn a lot of money. So what MDEC has done is to help them to learn more about e-commerce, about selling on marketplaces, about selling on social commerce, so Facebook and Instagram.
But is that on a large scale? Is the outreach adequate? Do you need to do more?
Yeah, so I think what MDEC has done is they've done some training. They are probably close to about 200,000 micro entrepreneurs who they have trained to help them increase their income. What they have discovered is just the training alone may not be enough. So they have called us in to say, can you coach them, spend 6 months with them, and let's see what the results are. So we did about 100 entrepreneurs, micro entrepreneurs, and the results have been fantastic. So we can actually increase their incomes by 100% to 300%. So and some of them even more. So imagine someone
within a period of
6 months.
Oh, that's phenomenal, right?
Yeah. So can you imagine someone that's earning something like 500 ringgit to 1,000 ringgit can now earn 3,000 ringgit. And if you do more of that, and that's the digital economy, because you're taking all of them, selling products in shops, onto marketplaces, onto social media. And by doing that, you're increasing their incomes. And what we have discovered is with especially the e-usahawan, because they're actually working in a different environment, they actually sell through agents, stockists, they have a lot of producers who produce little things everywhere. So the benefit actually becomes a lot more. So if they are earning,
they're like creating an ecosystem, right?
They have their own ecosystem. So if we do, for example, right, we did one batch of 50 micro entrepreneurs, and we discovered their ecosystem is actually 2,500 people.
Okay.
So you're actually benefiting a lot more than that. So if you increase their incomes, right, by let's say 100 or 300%, you're increasing a lot of other people's income by 100, 300% as well. So although you look at micro entrepreneurs, even if you do 100 of them, you're benefiting almost 2,500 to 5,000 of them.
Moving on from there, if you really want to help a larger section of the B40 and you really want the rural people to really benefit from this and the adoption of digital technology, what would you propose to be included in Budget 2020?
So for example, one is of course to do more for e-usahawan, right? So you need to do more to help them to scale up their business. Secondly, I think there are a lot of digital entrepreneurs who have digital technology for everything, from agriculture to manufacturing. You know, you have all of those guys. You need to help them to actually sell more. So we're talking about maybe market access, right? So I give another example. The farming community, right, is very large in Malaysia, especially in the very rural areas, right? But if you use digital technology well, you can help them earn extra income. So we take fishermen, for example, right? They go out, they fish, they do the difficult part of the job, but they earn very little incomes because you have the middleman who will buy the fish from them at a very low price. Now, these fishermen don't actually know what the price is like. What's the price being sold in KL? What's the price being sold in the wholesale market?
Or the fish sold in Singapore.
Or Singapore. So if you look at in India, for example, right, the farmers or the fishermen have apps that tells you what the market price is for each of these fish in different parts of the country. So if they can tell you, okay, the wholesale market in Selayang sells it at this price. Now, imagine if this digital technology gives them this knowledge. They can now bargain with the middleman and say, hey, you know, I'm selling at a much higher price
and demand a higher price from them.
And demand a higher price from them. If you go even further than that, right, in places like Holland and Japan, you know, they actually auction off, for example, they auction fish, they auction tulips. So can you imagine if we have such a system in Malaysia where the fishermen take you to a particular spot and then they actually auction the fish to the highest bidder? Can you imagine how much more they can earn, you know? And, you know, the other thing that we have is, you know, we have technology that can even scan the ocean near where they are fishing and tell you where all the fish shoals are.
Is that being adopted?
It's available. No, it's available.
But
it's not being adopted.
Why?
That's a good question, right? I mean, the technology for all of this is available. So what needs to be done is, I think there needs to be a lot more focus on looking at communities and saying, how can we benefit these communities? How can technology or digital technology benefit these communities? So if you take, for example, the Ministry of Agriculture, if you pair them up with MDEC, for example, and they say, look, we have fishermen communities, right? How can we use digital to help fishermen communities? And then you can look at these technologies and then it can easily be adopted. So, and there are actually Malaysian companies that can create all of these technologies. You know?
So that means you really help a lot of people, but then you don't have to just focus on any one sector. And giving loans and money is not just the complete answer.
Correct.
There needs to be some kind of a handheld kind of a training in adoption of e-commerce.
Correct. So we have actually found that you need to help them understand digital better. You need to help them understand technology better, right? If you can do that, you can actually scale them up to a new level. Now, if you look at farmers in India, if they can learn about all these technologies and use them, it's easily adopted in Malaysia as well. So that's easily done. So if you look at it from that angle, right, you can benefit the B40 easily, whether it's farmers, whether it's fishermen, whether it's traders. There's so many ways you can benefit them. And then on the other hand, Malaysia has been very good at technology to create a lot of companies. So we have a lot of technology companies. Many of them actually do business outside Malaysia as well. There are programs to actually help them go and export outside Malaysia. Now, but however, many of them are actually not very large. So if you look at large companies, you always look at the foreign companies, right? Even you look at e-commerce, you look at Lazada and Shopee and all of that kind of stuff.
And all that. Why is that so? Why are our players not becoming large? I mean, like.
So if you look at how does someone build such a large company, right? It's not about the technology. We can create a technology. It's about marketing. It's about sales. It's about actually doing a lot more to create awareness. People like Lazada and Shopee raised a lot of money. They raised large sums of money outside Malaysia, right? And then they actually do this on a regional basis. We have good companies in Malaysia. We need to help them so that they can do the same thing. But unfortunately, the one thing that's really missing, the two things missing in Malaysia. One is funding. Secondly, is the right amount of talent, right? So in terms of talent, I think if we talk about technology talent, I think universities can do more. I think there needs to be better education even at the earlier levels. But if you look at funding, for example, there is very little funding available in Malaysia on the larger scale. So if you look at small scale, if you look at prototyping, there used to be a lot of funding available. A lot of that is gone. So now there's a lot less funding available. And this was already in the previous budget itself. It's been reduced. If you look at large amount of financing, if you want to do a Shopee or a Lazada, you need to raise 50 million, 100 million, 200 million ringgit or US dollars.
So we have the technology, but we are not marketing or promoting ourselves because of all these kind of impediments.
Correct.
Yeah, one of the questions I ask you, how do you move away from technology or sector-based initiatives to those that are broad-based and with greater economic and societal impact,
Yeah. So I think if you look again, previously, over the years, there's always been focus on certain areas, right? So many years ago, there was a big focus on just call centers, right? So everybody, there's so much money being thrown at bringing call centers into Malaysia. But the benefit hasn't been very large. Yes, you have certain call centers, you benefit certain number of people, but it's not very large. And then you look at, they look at certain technology like big data, they look at technology like AI. Yes, it is important to do that. We cannot neglect that. We need to create these industries. We need to create companies to do that. But what about on a larger economic scale? So I would rather that they look at things in terms of, okay, if this is agriculture, what technologies can help us scale up agriculture? Because we are importing a lot of food from abroad. We spend billions importing excessively. But there are actually a lot, because in our area, in our field, right, we coach companies, we train companies. My company Proficio has coached almost 700 companies, right? 2,000 plus entrepreneurs. So we see a lot of different technologies, we see a lot of companies. So there are companies that are doing broad-based technology that can benefit a wider group of people, right? So this is where our agencies should actually help them. So we have very good agencies. We've got agencies like Cradle, we've got MDAC, we've got Magic. They are doing a lot of stuff already. But I think what's happening is sometimes they all are working in silos because the ministries are not actually incorporating them, adopting them, or working together with them. So, for example, Ministry of Agriculture needs to work with them, right? The Ministry of Trade and Industry has to work with manufacturing, for example. Technology is not a problem. We have created a lot of entrepreneurs. When Tun first started MSC Malaysia, everybody wanted to get into digital. So the whole bunch of companies that were created. And even today, you go for all these networking sessions, you see a lot of young people creating new technologies. So that is never the problem. The problem is, the government needs to do more in terms of helping them to scale up their business, to do market adoption, and those sort of things.
So that means you really need to do more. I think did you all have any dialogues with the government to sort of impress upon them to do more for the digital?
Yes, actually. So the good thing is, we are very happy with the current government. They have actually been very open they have actually engaged with entrepreneurs. They have engaged with associations, for example. So one of them was the Ministry of Science, in terms of MASTEC. They also done some of these engagements.
Yes, Dr. Siva, a lot more to talk about actually. In fact, talking about the issues, if you don't adopt digital, then you might lose out on productivity and efficiency, but a lot more to talk about. But hold your thoughts. We'll take a short break and we'll be back after these messages. Stay with us. Yeah. Welcome back. We are talking on the budget proposals and perhaps some suggestions for the digital economy. Dr. Siva, question is, what are the dangers if our entrepreneurs, you're talking about micro, you're talking about rural area, you're talking about the general populace, and basically the Malaysian economy, if they don't adopt digitalization, if our economy does not evolve into a digital economy, what are the dangers? Are we going to lose out? Are we oblivious to the fact that we might lose out?
I think we certainly will lose out. I think the whole world is going digital. If you look at improving productivity, one of the problems with our economy that a lot of people talk about is that we are not productive enough. If you look at our neighbor, our competition really is with our neighbors, right? If you look at Vietnam, if you look at Indonesia, they are adopting technology in a big way. Before this, we had people like Korea who are adopting technology in a big way. And what they have done is they've adopted technology to become more productive. If we can become more productive, your economy will improve. So I think technology adoption is very, very important to improve the productivity and the efficiency. For example, in terms of manufacturing, we have a lot of factories that are actually doing things in the old way, using cheap labor, for example.
The conventional way. And all
conventional way, using cheap labor to do low-level sort of products, right? Now, we can't compete with Indonesia and Vietnam and Bangladesh who have cheap labor, or as it is, lower cost labor. What we need to do is we need to move them up to the next level to use technology, to use robotics to actually improve productivity and do higher value added products.
Doctor, talking about moving to the next level, the higher level, what about talent development and venture capital? Is that an area that we really need to give some impetus and push in the budget?
These are two areas that I'm very passionate about. Something I really love to talk about. So let's look at talent, for example, right? I would say that Malaysia actually has a lot of talented people. If you go abroad, you will find a lot of Malaysians in very high-paying jobs, doing a lot of management jobs, for example. So Malaysia has good talent. If you talk in terms of talent development and how important that is, I'll give you an example. We run a program called the Coach and Grow program. Over the last 8 years, from 2011 when we started the program till 2018, we have coached 469 companies. Now, the growth rate of these companies that we have coached are easily in excess of 100 to 300%. That means there are companies that are growing their revenue 100% more than they did before. So they're doubling revenues, they're growing up to 300%. Now, what this means is these companies are increasing their incomes and revenues far higher than normal SMEs. If you look at statistics in Malaysia, the average SME only grows its revenue or income by 9%. And we are talking about 100% to 300%.
Within a period, like you said?
Within a period of 12 months in this case, Coach and Grow program. And how do we do this? This is about actually improving the talent within entrepreneurs themselves, within the entrepreneur teams themselves. So entrepreneurship can be taught, right? You can teach people to be better marketers, to build better products, to have better strategies, right? We can teach them all of this. And if you give us, say, 12 months, and you will put them through this program, we can show that they can do this in leaps and bounds. Now, the important thing about that is if they are growing like this, they are hiring more people as well. And when you look at technology companies, right, they pay people a lot higher than if someone is working in a low-end job in retail, for example, right? So in technology companies, if they do well, if they grow well, if they're increasing their revenues, they hire more people and they pay them a higher price.
You're talking about the spillover benefits.
The spillover benefits is fantastic.
what bugs me is that why is that when you're talking about all these entrepreneurs and those who come and to you and learned all this, what about SMEs, which are the backbone of the manufacturing sector?
Yeah.
75% or 90% are even supposed to contribute to the economy very significantly. Why are they lagging behind? Is there some issues? Is the government not doing enough?
So I think in this area you can't blame the government, right? Because I think the government has been trying very hard. They've been working very hard to do this. We have seen technology adoption among SMEs to be extremely slow.
Why?
So Malaysian SME seems to be very conservative. Many of them are run by the older generation who are actually ultra conservative. But the silver lining seems to be that the second and third generations are starting to take over these SMEs. So when younger people start to take over, they are looking at adopting more technology. So they are a bit more open to risk, they're a bit more open to technology, and many of them are also born with technology. So they are actually starting to do that. I think over the next 5 to 10 years, a lot of our SMEs will probably shut down, because if they don't adopt technology, they're not going to improve the productivity or efficiency. They will not be able to compete with our neighbors.
That's very concern to the economy, because it's supposed to be contributing significantly to the GDP.
Yes.
But the question is, we're talking about SMEs not doing enough. Maybe the way we are doing things is the old way or the conventional way, because I'm talking about banks. Every time we're talking about funding, looking to the agencies and the budget. What about the banks? Are they very reluctant to give loans to these new players, which they are very wary about, like we're talking about disruptions and all that?
Correct. So if you look at funding for technology players, technology companies, technology companies have no asset. You don't have a wall that you can knock on a wall and say there's a building here. There's no machinery. There's no collateral.
No collateral.
So because of that, and because a lot of banks don't understand technology per se, there's no asset, there's no collateral, they're a little bit more risk averse. So that's why we needed to actually set up an agency like MDV, for example, Malaysia Debt Ventures, right? And they look at technology companies and they fund technology companies.
Are they enough?
It's definitely not enough.
Not enough. That's exactly the
Absolutely
point.
not enough. So I think, if you look at funding, there needs to be looked at from different angles, right? First, you need to look at very, very early stage funding for really high risk things that are done. For these kind of areas, you need grants. You need grants for prototyping and R&D. And America, the most advanced country in the world, has 120 different types of grants offered by different nations, different states, and different federal governments, and the federal government. But if you look at Malaysia, we need to offer grants so that we can encourage more prototyping and more risk-taking. Then we need to offer venture capital so that when these guys have developed all these products, they can scale these products and grow these products and expand their markets. And then we need to have debt funding. So that's where people like MDV come in to provide debt or loans so that they can use these loans to grow as well. Unfortunately, our banks are not doing enough because banks are still funding conventional companies. I think the banks need to look at it as this is the next stage of growth of Malaysia. Our next stage of growth is technology. It needs to be about technology growth, technology creation, technology adoption. So our SMEs need to look at doing technology adoption, because we already have technology creators in Malaysia.
See, the question is, banks are quite reluctant, maybe they are very conservative, but perhaps maybe you can give some examples of new innovative products and services created by our entrepreneurs that one day can be an unicorn, and maybe banks can look at it, hey, there's something that I should look at,
Right. If you talk about unicorns, the first people that will grab it will be the venture capitalists, because they would rather build a unicorn than the banks who just want to loan money and get their 8% interest or whatever. But if you look at one of the companies that came through our program, right, it's called IGL Coating. They do nano coating for cars, right? So for example, if you have a car, they coat the car, dust and dirt and nothing will get stuck on the car, for up to a year. So whatever you go through, anything, you just splash it with water, all the thing goes off, because it's nano coating on the paint. 99% of the business is outside Malaysia. In fact, the US is their largest market, and the automotive market in the US is huge. So these guys actually they were funded by Platcom, which is part of Agensi Inovasi Malaysia.
Yeah.
You know, they were supported by a lot of different government agencies. They were funded by Cradle, for example, you know. But they built all of this on their own without venture capital funding because they couldn't get venture capital funding. But fortunately for them, there were grants. And they used that to their benefit. And they have no loans either because they couldn't get loans.
But then more needs to be done come October 11th on budget day for the digital economy, right?
Correct. So more needs to be done. So if I can summarize it very quickly, right? First, the government needs to fund more venture capital because we create a lot of companies. We need to fund them so that they can scale, they can grow, they can even export the services, right? They need to do that because in our companies, just our Coach and Grow program alone, 469 companies have generated more than 2 billion in revenues. So if the government does the right thing, whether it's talent development or venture capital, we can grow the technology sector and we can even grow technology adoption and become much more successful.
Yeah, Dr. So we run out of time anyway. Thank you for your insights into the digital economy. We'll have to wait for October 11 to see how far the government will go towards helping the digital economy. So that's all
Thank you very much.
That's all for Biz Talk today. Until the next time, bye for now.